Leeds United. It's been a bit of a disappointing few weeks to them in terms of the results. Daniel Farke's very much under pressure at the moment. There's been a bit of talk about whether he could soon leave Ellen Road. So do you think he could be facing the sack soon if the results don't improve?
It's so unfair that the rumours are saying that he's got his next two games to save his job, and you've got Chelsea and Liverpool. I mean, that's a little bit cruel. But anyway, look, I think there is a move that is going to give him more time. I think the performances have been good for Leeds. The players are definitely playing for him. There's no doubt about it. And they were, they showed the second half against Man City that Leeds have got something there about them. I think there's a few issues that we've got to consider that may not just be all about Daniel Farke. I mean, look, he has built a team that was supposed to be physical and was supposed to be able to overpower the opposition and was able to handle a relegation battle. And he's got to stick to that plan. At the moment, sometimes they sort of take their foot off the gas and aren't physical, and they start trying to play football, and they haven't quite got the players to do that. So, he's got to get back to his own plan. But also, look, the pressure will be on them certainly in January. Don't forget, we've been discussing in the last few months about the new stadium renovation plans at Elland Road. So there's a lot of money going to be invested in there, and that really was, we were talking about the green light for that being given when they got promoted back up to the Premiership. So there's a big investment there from their owners on that. Now there's also the owners, and really more than Daniel Farke, there's question marks now about the owners. Don't forget, this is the group that have got Rangers and Leeds. And we're seeing both clubs with very poor decision making at the top level. And I'm starting to think maybe it's time that the fingers need to be pointed a bit further up the chain in terms of some of these key decisions that are being taken, because they're not getting it right to either club. And so maybe that's where we need to be looking at this, and whether we're seeing the learning curve coming in from the American owners. I don't know, because it's certainly, to me, that's where the issue seems to be pointing. Now, if I was in that position, I'd be looking to, stick with Farke right now. I'd support him in January, but I'd be doing all I can to get the club back on track in terms of the physical approach. And really, they are playing for him, and I don't see a new manager could really do much more about it. And in terms of new managers coming in, we're getting the same old names. We're getting Ange Postecoglou, we're getting Brendan Rodgers, we're seeing Gary O'Neill. Those are the sort of usual names being thrown around, and I don't see them being vast improvements on Daniel Farke at the moment. And as I say, as long as he has the players still playing for him, and it seems they are, I haven't heard about any great discontent in the dressing room. I think just a couple of results, and I think that could turn round. But also, there's got to be some, as I say, some more scrutiny of Parag Mathy and the people at the top of Leeds and the group now, given their just recent history in Rangers as well. It's shown them it ain't so easy as it seems.
And then at West Ham, we've talked extensively about Lucas Paqueta's situation, obviously, after the previous kind of betting situation he had there that he was proven not guilty of. And it's now kind of the situation has taken a new turn after he was sent off at the weekend against Liverpool, after many people have said it was not the best behaviour from him, but he's actually taken aim at the authorities around the situation on social media. So do you think he's kind of got a right to be frustrated about how he's treated? But how would you personally approach this situation if you were in the club?
Well, I don't think this is the authorities' issue, really. Although they were the ones that levelled the charges, I don't see them being totally responsible for his, support, if you like, and mental well-being afterwards. I actually think he's got to look at himself in the mirror, and I think the club will have supported him and will have offered him some help, whether he accepts it or whether this is just really a dissatisfaction with the whole situation, and he's making it pretty clear that he did lose it. There's no doubt. I mean, we all saw it. We were all telling him shut up, walk away, but he didn't, and you could just see he'd mentally just gone into a fit of rage, and that's understandable. But I'm afraid I've seen a lot of players over the years who lose it, who are very competitive. I don't think he can actually start blaming outside influences so much. Yes, he's been through a lot, but a lot of players go through broken legs, injuries, all sorts of dark times in their careers. And by the way, he was found, not proven. And so yes, we all understand he had a very bad few months, but there have been worse things that happened in the game, and so I think he's got to get a grip. Now, if there is mental health counselling he needs, I'm sure it's available, and I'm sure it has been available for him. And the clubs would have been very conscious about that. But I just wonder if this is part of the makeup of his true character, and whether this is just showing a greater overall dissatisfaction with the situation he's in. Some questions that we can't answer because we're not psychoanalysts, but I do think there's a little bit of his own responsibility that's got to come out on this, and I think he's actually got to own up to it. And if he has to take counselling, fine. If I'd been there as chief executive, I'd have made sure he was offered it. I've had difficult situations with employees where we've had to do that before, and it can be the right situation. But unless, as with all these things in human life, unless somebody really wants to fix it themselves internally, no amount of counselling will help. But I think he's actually got to own up to himself, and the problem's got to start being fixed there internally.
In terms of another big story, our old friend John Tex has been giving us another interesting insight into his business and all the things that have been going on with him. He's kind of suggested now his relationship with Evangelos Marinakis has enabled him to adjust transfer fees to the benefit of their clubs. Obviously, they've got multiple clubs between them, Nottingham Forest being the main one for Marinakis, involving the Premier League. So how do you expect the Premier League to maybe investigate this situation and look into it? Because it does seem like that there is a conflict there.
Not really. I don't see a problem, to be honest. I mean, it's a private business relationship between clubs. Nobody says you have to sell at a market value. I mean, who would put a market value on players? And I think there has been, something like 9 transactions, with players. And yes, it may be that they help each other out on different ways. Now, of course, if it's proven to circumnavigate the PSR rules, which is what what you're alluding to, that's one thing to look at, but it's very, very difficult to prove that. And I think if there is a consistent, belief that Brazilian players are great to come into the league, some work, some don't. So you might say, look, I'm going to lend you this one, or I'm selling you this one at a lower value, let's say 10 million, and he turns out to be a world beater and he comes worth 50, 60, 70 million, then yes, I'd like more on my next deal with you. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think it's quite healthy to actually have that relationship. Look, Eagle Football is just one big experiment right now. Again, they're posting big losses. Texters, I know that he just done this interview, in South America, and it leaked out into the UK media this morning. Never one shy of saying some controversial things, that's for sure. Look, overall, though, Texter, I think he's onto something with Eagle Football in terms of the way he is trying to produce a player talent and player pipeline from South America. But I think something is lacking in his execution in the way that he's managing that interface and the way he's managing his involvement in European clubs. It's a difficult one, but look, the game's full of characters, and he is certainly committed to the game, that's for sure. He has made some mistakes, and I think he'll be the first to admit it. But he's another story that won't stop giving us some sound bites. But this is one that I'm not overly concerned about, because I think I understand what's going on. It isn't hidden, and here he is. He's being very open about it. And I think, why wouldn't, if you're doing frequent business with clubs, why couldn't you come to some arrangement that, if somebody does, a player, as I said, does very well, why wouldn't they want to be recompensed at a later date in some form? Anyway, it's something that needs a bit more scrutiny, but overall, I'm not unduly concerned.
Maybe it was just me being a cynical journalist looking into that one a bit more than it is. And then elsewhere in terms of Nottingham Forest, I talked before about Elliot Anderson and what will happen with him over the next few months after he's been so involved with England recently. Probably Nottingham Forest are determined to keep hold of him ahead of the January window. So how much do you think it will really take for them to even consider selling him?
Well, as I've said all along, it's going to be the World Cup is going to be the key thing for Elliot Anderson. I think he will do well in the World Cup, and he'll be £100 million player, and that's what it's going to take. And I think that's the case. I think Newcastle are kicking themselves. Now, here's an example we just talked about a player who was sold because of PSR issues and turns out to become a lot more valuable than they thought initially. Now, would it be fair for Forest to sort of, some way make up for the money to Newcastle in the next transfer? Possibly. Anyway, it's Elliot Anderson. I think he's going to be, providing injury-free. I think he will shine. I think his time is coming. I think he'll be one of the best, most valuable players, and certainly in the £100 million range.
And at Sheffield Wednesday, they've been deducted a further 6 points as the situation keeps evolving around them. So what have you made of the latest developments surrounding the club?
Well, I've been keeping a close eye, of course. I mean, look, it's another 6 points, which really doesn't make that much difference because I think everybody agrees they're already down. I think they're on -10 now. I've been watching the whole process carefully. It does seem that we're coming towards the end game. Claims of 5 or 6 bidders. I'm aware of at least 5. I know the identities of at least 5 that have been in the media as well. 2 local guys, plus 1 American. Who else have we got? We've got Mike Ashley, of course. And then the owner of Midtjylland, which is quite the interesting one, of FC Midtjylland, who have been very progressive and an interesting club. That would be a very interesting tie-up. Now, we're talking about 30 million plus is going to be something like the winning bid. I don't think it'll be that much above that because the administrator recognises that whoever comes in will have to spend a lot of money on stadium and the club itself. So they're not going to push them, I don't think, beyond that. But certainly anything under 30 wouldn't be accepted. So we're looking at 30, 35. And it'll be one of those groups. Now, good people. And so good potential owners, all with access, from what I understand, to serious cash. The 2 local ones could be interesting as well, if local guys made good. I mean, you look at what Doug Ford has done at Coventry, and that's a local guy who hasn't had to spend that much money, but basically rescued a club, a bit like Sheffield Wednesday, that was a regional club, a big club with a big history, and turned it back into a force. And we're seeing them do great things with Frank Lampard. So it can be done. And often local is good, rather than, perhaps Mike Ashley might be seen as somebody who wants to use it more for his own ends. I do believe that if the local guys get involved and they get, crucially, the right football advice, very crucial, then I think something could be done. We all know Wednesday is a big club that could be there. We don't need to repeat all that, but still, it just needs that local interest, but with the right advice. The danger is always when local people can get involved. Sometimes they think they know more about football than everybody else, and they want to try and do it all themselves. That's not the way to do this particular case for Sheffield Wednesday, because it will take proper football knowledge to make them into a progressive club going forward. Now, the one story that made me laugh was the Sheffield Wednesday American owners writing and asking, could they try and get Sheffield Wednesday, then merge the 2 clubs together. I mean, that just made me shake my head, and it makes all the American owners, I hope, shake their heads and think, oh no, this is why people don't like American owners coming in with no knowledge of the situation in Sheffield and suggesting something as stupid as that. And so that's just one of the things that happens in these sort of situations. But there we go. It's one of the interesting points through the whole process.
I was shaking my head myself when I saw that one.
Yes, yeah.
And then elsewhere in the Championship, Wrexham have received almost £80 million in non-repayable grants from the Welsh Government. What are your thoughts on that after seeing the story around it?
I think it is absolutely despicable. I really think it's basically state aid. Now, Britain's no longer in the EU, and it reminded me of a story where Real Madrid were getting basically EU state aid. But there are still rules around getting government aid. I think that, look, I've been around stadium development projects, and all we'd ever been able to get in terms of government funding, and quite correctly, was money for roads or transportation situations to be improved around the area. That's what the government grant was for to Wales, to try and do that. Now, the argument that they're trying to make is that this is going to be improving the stadium and allow it to host more international and national events that will help the economic impact in North Wales. Well, I'm afraid when we're seeing the Wrexham owners, we're seeing Netflix, we're seeing the revenue coming in, we're seeing now the club almost valued at £350 million. I'm afraid there is enough money in there to reinvest in the club and rebuild their own stadium. I think it is criminal, and I think that there should be a major inquiry into this money and if it can be clawed back, because it's a non-repayable grant. It isn't repayable, and I think it's wrong. Now, beyond this, this brings up the question, if the government of Wales are going to allow them to do this, is it time for Wales and Welsh football clubs to be in their own league? And, take Cardiff and Swansea out of the English Football League and Wrexham out of the English Football League and let them play in a Welsh league. Because you can't have clubs like Stockport, who are very close to Wrexham, not getting government aid as Wrexham have done. So I'm very angry about this, and I think it really, we need to look into this a lot further. And it's the wrong use of government money. We're seeing, we've just seen the last budget when there's been, all sorts of issues around, handouts and all the rest of it. I won't go into the political issues, of course, but nevertheless, this is not the right use of government money when you've got two very healthy, well-heeled American owners and good revenues coming into the club. And they have access to capital to be able to do this themselves. And if they want to do it, they should be reinvesting in the club. And if they've got any state aid at all, certainly on putting on other events, that might be the right time to do it. But not in terms of building a stadium that will give their club more valuation and more money for themselves. So as you can tell, I'm quite exercised about this, and I think it's wrong.
Then moving on up to Scotland, we talked a lot about the title race in recent weeks. Hearts obviously had a flying start, but been struggling over the last couple of weeks. Celtic are just 1 point behind them in the race now with a game in hand. So what's your take on the title race at this point? Where do you kind of see it going? Is it looking at inevitable Celtic are just going to take over again?
Unfortunately, we've seen echoes of last season when Aberdeen had the most fantastic start and raced away, and everybody thought this could be the year another club's going to win it instead of the old firm. Yes, Hearts have had a few stumbles. It does seem as though there was pressure on them already this early in the season. I do think they're a bit better placed than Aberdeen, though, and I think we'll see them making it a bit of a battle. Certainly, I think Celtic may get the new manager bounce as well coming in. Martin O'Neill, God bless him, has done a great job as the caretaker. And I think actually what Celtic should do is at least let Martin O'Neill stay on until the cup final and the League Cup final, and let him bow out after that game, because I think that would give the new manager a chance. Because if the new manager came in and lost the cup final, that would be a bad start. So you might as well just either let Martin O'Neill go out with a victory and be the hero, or if it's a loss, then the new manager won't be affected. So to me, that would have been a more sensible view, rather than letting him take that as his first game, which I think is a mistake, given he doesn't understand or doesn't know the SPL and the whole local pressures. So, yes, we've got Celtic, I think, now starting to settle down, and I think the O'Neill caretaker position has got them restabilised. He's done a great job, and yes, that they're breathing down Hearts' neck. So I do expect them to keep going, and it will be pretty relentless. But hopefully, Hearts have got something a bit more about them and can try and make it close at least.
Well, in terms of Wilfred Nancy, apparently he wants to bring striker Wessam Abu Ali to Celtic from Columbus Crew, obviously where he's coming from himself. So do you think that could be a good addition given his goal scoring record in the MLS and previous leagues he's played in?
No, I don't. I think it's a wrong decision. And I think certainly for the manager coming in, not seeing the game firsthand and understanding the skills needed to prescribe a player coming in is not the right sign and the right thing to be doing straight away. So I'd be very concerned about that. Certainly in the summer, once he's had half a season to look at the SPL and weigh it up, fair enough, that it's his choices. But to try and do it now, I'm afraid, is not good, and that's not a great way to start, in my opinion.
And then moving on to Rangers, obviously they had that disappointing 0-0 draw with Falkirk at the weekend. Danny Roll, there's a lot of question marks around the squad. Obviously, it's not his squad and his players that he's working with at the moment in time. So do you expect him to look to make big changes in the January window?
Yes, I do. I do think they've got to be active in January, a bit like Leeds have got to be active in January, and both clubs, as we talked about it, have got, I think, a weakness at the very top of the organisation here, and they're almost going to be pushing them to do things in January, and that's something of slight desperation feeling about both clubs. And that comes from the top. But I think Danny Roll he's impressed me with the way he started, the way he's approached things. Seems very level-headed. The players seem to be responding quite well, but there is a bit of a lack of quality. And yes, I do expect them to do something in January. It'll be interesting to see how Roll handles this, because without real sporting director situations at the moment, then he's going to have to be more instrumental probably than normal. So we'll see a lot of the players that do move in will be Danny Roll type players, and he'll be involved in that. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of things he favours in terms of their personality and their character.
Definitely. And then there's been quite an interesting situation that developed around the academy director role at Ibrox. They had agreed a deal for Jonathan Hunter-Barrett to come over from Wolves, obviously in the Premier League, but now he's actually made a U-turn on that decision and he will remain at Wolves as the academy director. So is that a big blow for the club and kind of not a great look on the ownership group there and the hierarchy at Rangers as well?
Look, he's a very highly rated young coach, and certainly of the people I've spoken to with academy knowledge rate him well. I think if we look at this, it probably was those discussions were probably happening before the Kevin Thelwell sacking. That's my guess, and I think that when Rob Edwards came into Wolves and was able to assure him that there was a future beyond relegation this year, which is looking very likely for Wolves, and that they were going to be part of a revamp of how the academy and the first team worked together, then I think that satisfied him, and he could see a long-term vision and more of the, I hate the word, project at Wolves. So I think that's what settled him down, but I think it would have been discussions that may have happened when there's more turmoil at Wolves, and I think Edwards has been able to keep him, and I think it's a good move for Rob Edwards to keep somebody that I think is quite important for them longer term. I think it would have, well, he's a young talent. I think it would have been difficult for him in Rangers, given the turmoil up there, and I think for him personally, I think it's the right choice to have stayed at Wolves. Rangers search continues, and as I say, there's a lot of pieces to put together now, and we'll be watching that, but that's certainly not seemed to be as settled as Celtic are appearing to be at the moment.
Definitely. Well, that's all from me today, Keith. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great. Listen, football tonight, Tuesday night, and Premier League Wednesday as well, so it's all going, and I can't wait for tonight's kickoff. So here we go. See you next week.